Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Live Your Purpose podcast. We want to encourage you every single day to live on purpose. And you know what? Today we have a special episode of the show because I am joined by my wife. My name is Sarah Bettinger, and this is my wife, Bethany. We've been married since July of 2010. So crazy enough, 15 years this year, which is, it's been a journey. There's no question about it. But Bethany is a wife, obviously, to me. She's the mother of our 4 children, and she also has to take care of me, which is a huge undertaking on a daily basis. And I think I wear a lot of hats, but you wear even more. I think it's crazy all the different things that you do. She leads our discipleship groups at Meadows Church. She leads our kids ministry at Meadows Church. And I was just thinking about this before we started recording, Bethany, that you should get the IGSD award, the I Get Stuff Done award, because Bethany just gets stuff done. So I'm really excited to get to chat with you about a really important topic. I think that this is a question that I think I wrestle with a lot, and I've talked about it in messages that I've done before, but like, are we raising our kids in a way that they'll resent the church? I think that there's a lot of times when you feel that way because you're trying to prioritize Jesus in your household. But before we get into the depths of that question, let's just break the ice a little bit. Let's tell everybody what's an ideal day for you. Like, if you could paint the ideal day, pick everything to do, like a yes day for Bethany, what does that look like?
Yes day. Well, I would have to say wouldn't have dogs.
Oh, right.
Having a full night of sleep, not being interrupted by any children in the night. That got to start it off well. Coffee right in the morning. Used to love going to Starbucks, but now that we have our home espresso maker,
Right.
I prefer that. So got to get coffee. Donuts are they might be my love language is donuts. I love donuts. We usually have donut Saturdays at our house, but I would have every day be a donut day. So donuts, coffee. I love to shop. Our whole family loves to shop, which is awesome. So probably, going to the mall, probably the outlet malls, because, indoor malls are they're not around anymore. Going shopping, getting lunch. I love a good burger. You guys, I like all the bad food, donuts, burgers, getting a nap in the afternoon, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
If we could swing a trip into Disney World,
I think
for the night, I would love to go
I
walk
was
around
waiting for you to get
Epcot,
there. Yeah.
walk around Epcot, all the countries, eat the food. Food basically is my yes day.
Yeah, I like it. I was waiting for you to get to Disney World because that's really where we should just always be wearing a hat or a shirt that says "I'd rather be at Disney World."
Or
basically,
Mickey ears.
Mickey ears. Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to ask you this question just point blank because I don't think we've done this on any of the episodes yet. But do you feel like you're living your God-given purpose?
If you would have asked me that 7 years ago, I would have said probably not. But right now, I totally believe that I am.
Why is that?
I believe, growing up, I always wanted to be a mom and I always wanted to be a teacher.
You always wanted to be with me. No.
Well,
not always.
yeah. I didn't really know you that much in elementary school when I was, playing house or school time. But yes, growing up, I always wanted to be a mom, would, play house all the time, would do school with my other siblings. I'm one of 5. So would do that. And I knew that I always wanted to do that. I think God put that on my heart at a young age. And now fast forward, 7, 8 years ago, I was a teacher back when we lived in Sioux Falls and got to do that. But now since moving here, I get to be a teacher to my kids because if you didn't know, we homeschool. So I get to be a teacher to my kids, and obviously I get to be a mom to them as well. So I think that's part of me playing my living my God-given purpose. And then I also get to do similar things in the church with leading kids ministry. I get to help equip leaders there, and then also leading our discipleship groups and leading leaders there as well. So yes, I fully believe that I am living my God-given purpose.
Was there a turning point at some point that you felt was okay, I definitely felt like I wasn't living my purpose before, and now I definitely feel like I am living my purpose? Was it when you became a mom the first time, or was it when you started homeschooling the kids, or what was the turning point?
Yeah, I think the moment that we decided to pull, Mila was our only one in public school at the time. When we decided to pull her out and homeschool her, I think that was like something completely flipped in me and like triggered in me, like, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I'm supposed to do. And the reason for that is, we are called to make disciples. And I think our kids are like the easy get to make disciples. They're the easy, choice. Yeah, they're the low-hanging fruit, because we get to pour into them for, the first 18 years of their life. So I want to make sure that I'm doing all that I can to equip them to be a disciple of Jesus.
I think people will be interested whether they are able to pull their kids from public school or not, or whether they agree with that or not. I think anybody would be interested to know why. I mean, you said it right there a little bit, the discipleship aspect of like, hey, we get to actually like be around our kids and show them the way and help raise them in that way. Whereas like you and I grew up in public school, and it's not that we weren't raised by our parents by any means, but I think that there was an element of influence that came from the people that were around us all the time. Like I was around my teachers all the time. I was around my peers all the time. Why homeschool? Like what was that? What was the tipping point for you to even want to do that?
I mean, number one, I think, is being able to spend as much time with my kids while they're under my roof as I possibly could. When they're at public school, they're there for, 6-7 hours a day. And that's time that I'm not going to get back as a parent. And, like you said, there are good influences in the school. There can be teachers or friends and whatnot, but there's also the worldly influences as well. So I think that was a huge thing. I also think that, with our lifestyle, like, we're both heavily invested in the church, and busy a lot of nights. So if we were continuing down the path of public school, they would be in school all day and then, be just dragged along at night. And I feel like we wouldn't have that intentional time with them.
For me, a little bit of it was fear-based because there's a lot of stuff that goes on. There was a lot of craziness going on at the time that we decided we were going to homeschool our oldest. And then, obviously Cruz was going into kindergarten. So it was kind of like we're going to be sending a second one to school and we're working from home. And, we could have them here, but there was a few things that were going down that certainly negative stuff in the news shouldn't inform every decision that you make, but enough stuff was happening with like school shootings and craziness that I was just like, you know what, Bethany's a teacher. We have the ability to do this, so let's do it. So that was part of it for me, but the real-time FOMO as a parent of, like you said, having the kids gone for 6-7 hours a day and then missing out on even so many evenings because we have meetings every other Monday. We have I have worship rehearsal every Thursday, and then we have obviously church stuff on the weekends, and it just gets to be a lot, to the point that like you feel like you're almost sacrificing the kids' childhood in a way, and that's not the case for everybody. That's and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad by any means, because my parents raised me well, and I have a great relationship with my parents, even though I wasn't homeschooled. So it's not the same for everybody else. I think everybody parents differently. Everybody has different strategies with that. And I think that's totally fine. But just to kind of peel back the curtain on why we decided to do this, and the discipleship aspect that you mentioned is a big, big deal. And it brings me back full circle to kind of the question that we started with, like, are we raising our kids to resent the church? And I think that that's a fear that I think a lot of Christ followers have, because, well, we feel like we're dragging our kids to church. We feel like we're forcing them to do this. We're forcing them to read the Bible every day. We're forcing them to go to kids' church. We're forcing them to be there whenever we're there, and we're there a lot. And so I think that there's an element of like, are my kids going to hate the church because of me? Like, are they going to even want a relationship with Jesus because of me? And I want to hear your thoughts on that too, because I know we talk about it a lot, just like in our own private time and things like that. But like, maybe speak to that element of it, like that fear of maybe having a kid, or our children in our case, having a disdain for the church because we bring them there all the time.
Yeah. No, and I think it is a real fear, like you said, we've brought it up, we've talked about it. You hear the stories of, even pastors' kids, they get to a point and they start, rebelling. And, our oldest is 12 right now. So we're not quite at teenage years yet, but we're getting there. But yeah, it's definitely been a fear of, man, my kid or my kids being at church with us all of the time, like, do they hate it? Are they going to hate being here because they're here so much? And, I think I've, prayed with God a lot and talked with him, and, he has given me peace that our kids are going to see our example and follow our lead. And I think it's not that kids will grow up resenting the church. I think they more maybe will resent, parental figures or the relationship with their parents surrounding church. Like you said, our kids, they come to church with us for everything. One way that, I think that we've kind of combated the, maybe our kids resenting coming to church. And this isn't to say we don't ever have days where our kids are like, oh, we have to go there again, or I don't want to get up early. Yeah. Like that does happen. We're all human, they're human. But I think one way that we've combated that is that we include them in the celebrations, in the wins, in the fun parts of ministry. And it's not always just the, we got to go set this up. We got to go clean this up. We got to go prepare for this. Like, we include them in, trainings that we have in a fun way. We will sometimes stop at Starbucks on the way to church when we're, leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, and giving them like small rewards and small treats to make it fun for them to want to come to church. And like, our kids, like, this is genuine. They love coming to church. This isn't us just saying that. If you ask any of them down here, they would say that they love coming to church. Our two middle kids now, because we have a baby now, not our middle and youngest, but our two middle kids, they're there for both services at church, and they love being in kids ministry. They love the relationships that they've built with their leaders and their friends, and, they like to come with us. And instead of just dragging them along in our ministry, we include them in the ministry that we're doing. We don't just shove them into a room and, say, see you later. We get, 4 hours without you. We're very intentional about making sure that we include them in all that we do.
Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that it's easy all the time either, because I think there would be a lot of resistance on the part of maybe any parent that's like, well, that's like, it's easy for you to say that, because X, Y, Z, like, my kid doesn't do this, or my kid won't want to do this, or won't sit through this, or this, that, and the other. And it's not just easy all the time. Like, it takes intentional effort in order to be able to coach them to be an example in what they're supposed to be doing in their own environments, in their own areas. Like our oldest Mila has been serving in the church for a long time now, even though she's only 12. And Cruz is very helpful, and Leia is very helpful in encountering the new guests. I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and will say, like, Cruz and Leia, they just are so welcoming to the guests, the new kids at church, that always invite them to play and things like that. And so it's just I think what's important to you, it's something that you have to invest in for a long period of time. It's not like just overnight or the very first time. Things are always going to be exactly as you picture them in your mind. There was a lot of weekends of just grinding through, like you said, dragging our kids into the church, and whether it was kicking and screaming, or whether it was when they're babies, strapping them on and putting them on while you do your thing, and just kind of showing them the joy in it. Because I was trying to think of the best way to articulate this earlier as we were prepping for this episode. Like, ultimately, we want our kids to love Jesus above wanting to be part of the church, and because they love Jesus, they will want to be part of the church. We're not raising them to love Meadows Church, although that is a byproduct of raising them to love Jesus, raising them to be putting him first, raising them to be, and again, it sounds like, oh, we've got it all figured out. That's not what I'm trying to say. Like, it's the mornings like this morning, the morning that we recorded this, when we put on our Bible reading plan, and it's 20 minutes of going through the book of Judges, and the kids are sitting up here at the kitchen counter and they're joking around and messing around while eating pancakes. And, our other one is, trying to pretend like she's listening, and then she's not. And even us, we're like almost kind of fidgeting, doing other things. But you push play, you keep on coming back, and you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, not because it's mundane or routine, but because that instills those habits and things like that. And so it's teaching them to fall in love with Jesus. And that's what I pray all the time, is that our kids will love Jesus more than anyone or anything else.
Yeah, no, 100%. I pray that our kids would have an even deeper relationship with Jesus than we do ourselves, because that relationship is, ultimately the only thing that matters in this world. Sports don't matter. School doesn't matter. Being a good friend doesn't matter. It's the relationship with Jesus. And so, yeah, 100%.
And your sports or your activities, or even being in the school environment, like that can be a mission field. Like, I thought that was my job for the longest time, is to, get your kids ready to go basically be missionaries in the dark place that is their school. Because I grew up getting made fun of. I grew up in a very unhealthy friendships that were, a lot of like, hey, I've got to suck up to these guys, otherwise I'm not going to be included in whatever it is that they're doing. And I've got to make sure that I'm acting and joking around to a certain degree that's like blurring the lines between, is this morally right or is it wrong? Like, and having to do all these sorts of things while also kind of trying to be an example. And it can be very confusing at that age range, or any age growing up, to have to feel like that. But we've seen, I think, a ton of kids coming up through the environments at Meadows Church who are, the seeds have been planted in them, and they're setting an example. We're starting to see some of the younger ones that came into the church when we first started now graduating, if you will, into the youth stages, and they're coming into the weekend service. What has that been like for you, to kind of see the growth of a number of kids from when they were, 6, 7 years old, to now they're in the youth ministry and kind of setting an example in that way?
Yeah, no, it's obviously really cool. Number one, just to see from when we first started, just the number of growth, from, we had like 4 kids in kids ministry total. And now on a weekend, we're, 100 plus, which is so awesome to see. But specifically seeing kids that went into the preschool room and then moving into elementary and then now going into youth. What's so cool is that like you said, those seeds are being planted. And they're not perfect kids by all means, but they are seeing an example being set for them. They're seeing leaders pour into them, and how cool it is that those youth kids are now serving in kids ministry to set that example for the younger kids, which I think is like just amazing to watch and witness. Because, little kids, they look up to big kids more than they do a parent or an adult. In the kids ministry, they're like, I want to see the big kid because they're cool. And so seeing those kids step into that role and be that example is it's what it's all about. So.
Mm-hmm. Practically speaking, what do you think could be some things for parents to take away from this, or even if somebody that's listening is not a parent, like what are some practical takeaways that you think you would say over the course of the last, 7, almost 8 years that we've been living here, that you would say, hey, do this like consistently and you will see fruit from it when it comes to pouring into the next generation or your own kids or whatever that may be?
Yeah, I think first, if you have kids, it's setting that example. So getting into the Word every single day with your kids, whether they like it or not.
Whether you like it or
Yeah,
not, honestly.
it's just like we've talked about, like working out or eating healthy. Like you don't always want to do it. You don't always want to go downstairs or go to the gym to work out. You don't always want to eat, the egg white omelet over the donut. I sure as heck don't. But in the long run that it's going to pay off. So getting into the Word with your kids daily, and I'm not saying you need to listen to the Old Testament for 20 minutes. It could be picking out a verse and just reading it together as a family, or listening to it in the car on your way to school or wherever you're at together. Starting there, doing something small and doing it every single day. Same thing with praying. If you don't pray right now, make it a habit to do it once throughout the day, whether it's right in the morning, right at the end of the day. So setting those habits now as kids, it'll be a lot easier for them to carry it on if they've been doing it, for their whole life. If it's just, a routine, like, yep, I get into the Word every day. I pray every day. So setting that example. And then also, I think just being really intentional with the time that you have with your kids in your house. They say it goes by quick, and it does. Like I said, Mila is 12, and to think that, we only have 6, more years where she's considered a kid is crazy. And time goes so fast, and it's so easy to be like, I'll be intentional tomorrow. I'll do this tomorrow with them. But we're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're guaranteed today. And I know that that's a heart check for me. Sometimes when my kids are like, come play with me. And I'm like, I have X, Y, and Z to do. Like, I don't have time to come play with you right now. And I'm not saying that every time they ask to play, I say, oh, yep, I'm going to come play with you, because I would get nothing done. Let's be honest. But making it an effort and an intentional effort to connect with them every day and to be with them every day and to just be present with them. I think that's what they want the most is our time. Yes, kids love to get things. Our kids love to get things, but the thing that they want the most is just time with us, whether it's just having weird conversations, about who the heck knows, or just watching a show together. Like they want that connection time. So I think setting an example, the first thing, and then being intentional with what you do with your kids.
Yeah, and I would say too that, and I know and I understand that the audience for this podcast is not necessarily all people who are heavily invested in the church, but for those who are heavily invested in the church, I say, the third thing that I would add to that is to bring your kids along for every step of the journey and help them to fall in love with Jesus and show them that your life is a reflection of being a servant of Christ in that way. Like you said, being an example in everything that we do. I'll never forget growing up, every single day walking down the stairs after I'd get ready and getting ready to go to school or go eat breakfast or whatever, my dad sitting in the exact same place every single morning, with the coffee on and his Bible open and his devotions going. I'm pretty sure he still uses the same books today.
It's duct tape.
It's basically duct taped together. And my mom as well, like praying every single morning with my mom and dad, and like not being able to sneak away and out of the house before them saying, hey, we're going to pray together. And do you think every single morning when like I'm in a bad mood as a teenager that I wanted to do that I wanted to sit there and pray for even 30 seconds or 2 minutes? Like, not a chance. But do I remember everything that we used to always pray together? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that God would enlarge our territories and keep us from evil, that we may not cause pain, that we be leaders among our peers, and things like that are seeds planted, and the word of God never returns void. And so when you bring your kids, and I'm always shocked to hear like how many words our kids remember from songs that we play at church. And I'm always shocked that like our kids memorize more scripture than certainly I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really crazy. So like, I think that there's an element of like, yes, we don't want our kids to resent the church, but I would far rather take the risk of like showing them the way and putting them in that spot of saying like, hey, you may not like this right now. It's just like any other discipline, right?
Yeah.
It's just like any other thing that we do. Like you mentioned the analogy of working out or eating healthy. It's like, I just had a terrible workout. It sucked. I hated it. I don't feel like I don't feel like I accomplished anything. And yet I was down there for almost an hour pushing around weights, burning calories, walking, doing things like to actively pursue these fitness goals. And it's the same thing with like just showing up, like just show up on Sunday mornings, just show up consistently, show up every day during the week to get into the word, turn on the Christian music in the car instead of whatever else it may be, or even just sitting in silence, pray for 30 seconds on your way to school. I mean, implement small little things consistently over time, and the results will come. I think that's such a big deal. And again, we don't always get it right. Like I think every parent believes before they're a parent, like before you have your first kid, you believe you've got it figured out, and like everybody else has done it completely wrong, right? And then a kid gets dropped into your lap and you're like, well, I guess I didn't know everything, so I'm excited for people to kind of get to know more about this. And I do feel like being a parent is the greatest purpose that God has given us. It is our main mission field. It is our primary objective is to raise them in the way that they will love Jesus Christ more than anyone or anything else. And that they would be an example in all things, that they would not let anyone look down on them because they're young, but instead in all things to be an example, to live it out. And I love that they do that. I know that they don't always get it right. There's no question about it. They need correction. They need guidance. And I'm glad that we can be there to watch them through that. So anything else that you feel on your heart to share, Bethany, when it comes to living out your purpose and what you're passionate about people knowing, and just this vein, I guess, as we go down this kind of raising kids and that being our primary objective?
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I think a lot of people will be like, well, how the heck am I going to homeschool? I work full time, or I want to homeschool, but I just don't know the logistics of how it'll work. Start with prayer. When we lived in Sioux Falls, like I said, I knew I always wanted to be a teacher and I always wanted to be a mom. And my heart was, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, which I get to do now, obviously. But I didn't know how that was going to work. We both had jobs in Sioux Falls. We had a mortgage to pay. No clue how. And then, we felt this call to move to Omaha to come plant meadows. And, I told Sarah straight up, I said, we can move to Omaha. But what did I say?
You want to stay at home.
Yeah, I said, I'm not sending my kids to daycare.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 at the time. Our youngest was 6 months. I said, we're not sending him to daycare. And Sarah said, all right. So we struggled for years here. The first few years, staying at home, trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to, pay rent? We had to, sell our house. We moved into an apartment. We went down to one vehicle. We did all these things. And I knew, like I said, my God-given purpose was to be a teacher and to be a mom. But I didn't know how that was going to work. And so we kept praying. And then, here we are now, however many years later, and I get to work for the church. Love that. I get to be a mom and I get to be a teacher to my own kids. So what I would say is, if you don't know how it's going to work, start praying, start asking God to move mountains, because he's the only one that can. He's the only one that made this happen, because in my mind, I don't know how this would have ever happened. Realistically, I should have moved here and gotten a job as a teacher. But I think if I would have done that.
Technically, you did.
Well, yes.
You were teaching, she was teaching the
English to Chinese students. I would have to get up at 4 a.m.
These are the things that we did.
Yes. So that I could stay home. I would teach from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. English to Chinese kids. Oh, man. Yeah, God has grown me. That's for sure. He tested my patience. But yes, pray, ask God to move mountains. Might not happen right away, but I guarantee you, God wants you to have the desires of your heart. And if that's what you want, pray about it. Ask God for it.
Yeah, and he goes above and beyond. I mean, and that's another thing that we used to always pray growing up, is that he will exceed abundantly above and beyond all that you can ask or dream or imagine. And it sounds so lofty when you're young and in a phase of like experiential faith, as opposed to like, okay, I actually have to ask God for big stuff now, because otherwise, like, my life is going to be miserable. And that's not to say that like, oh, God will, bless you with the greatest vehicle that you could ever imagine, and the biggest house that you could ever imagine, and like you're going to be debt free in two months or whatever. Like, it's not like a prosperity sort of thing. It's above and beyond what you can ask, dream, or imagine. And what that is you have a set expectation for what's going to be great. And God has this thing that's way greater. No matter, like, yes, we still have to work a lot. We still have to put in a lot of hours. We still have to do a lot of different things. But I think it's so much more fulfilling, the life that we have now, than what I could have possibly, like, when we lived in Sioux Falls more than 8 years ago, I couldn't have possibly even imagined. Like, I would be so jealous of you being at home in the summers with the kids, and I would be going into an office and doing all these things. And I'd think, man, like, if I could just stay home even for like a week, it would be the dream life. And now we get to do that every single day. And we get to serve in the church and show our kids the way and bring them up and teach them these disciplines and teach them these things. And they don't look at us as dictators. They look to us for the example. And they follow that example whether we like it or not, right? And so it's whatever it is that you're doing that you feel like, man, I don't know if I'm setting the right example for my kids, or if I'm living the right way, or if I can even start here because like I have older kids, or just start somewhere and start somewhere small, like getting in the Word every day and letting them see the example and see the fruit of that in your life. And so I really believe and pray that something that we've shared from our experience will land with you when it comes to living out your purpose as a parent or as a leader of the next generation, because somebody's always following your example. And I think it's easy to fall into this belief that, man, because I'm being so strict with my kids, or because I'm being so like dedicated to the church, that they're going to resent the church. There is a way to help them fall in love with Jesus first and foremost, more than showing them that, hey, like, the church is above you guys and the church is above our family, and that's not the mentality to take. The mentality is, like you said, being intentional with your kids while setting the example at the same time. Easier said than done a lot of times, but it's something that has to be done. And there's no question about it. So we appreciate you so much. If you have any questions at all regarding kids ministry, homeschooling, anything like that for Bethany, you can send her an email, bethany.bettinger@meadows.church. I'm sure she would love to hear from you and answer any questions that you may have, because you're really passionate about not just kids ministry and discipleship ministry, but also leading families in that way. And so we'll put her email down in the description as well. Really appreciate you all for tuning in. Thanks for being part of this journey with us as we go through the Live Your Purpose podcast. It's going to be very exciting. For the next episode, I'm actually going to sit down with my brother Bryce, and we're going to unpack a little bit more of what Bethany kind of started sharing about, which was our move to Omaha almost 8 years ago now, and the way that God moved and worked through that, and the challenges of that, and just the abundance of blessings that we have seen through that. So looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for listening today.